follower sent me a video of a church congregation in Georgia that consists of a 2-minute prayer declaration. This took place on July 1st at the Gas South Arena in Duluth, Georgia. Starts off typical enough for, a congregation, pledging yourself to God, yada yada yada, the usual stick. Then it takes a, well, let's just call a spade, batshit insane and terrifying turn. I'll be providing short clips of the video because if I provide the whole thing and my commentary, this will get a little long. But here's a few bits, starting with the introduction.
As a patriot of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God.
So it's called the Watchman Decree, which I thought was an immediate red flag given the associations Watchman has with things like sovereign citizen movement and the implicit we know what's best mentality. But the first part is just your typical of a religious organization stuff. Pledging allegiance to the faith, God is my creator and I am his vessel, blah de blah de blah. Although the word allegiance is a little weird, but given America and that weird culty flag thing they do, it kind of makes sense. Then there's a promise to make sure people have the basic rights established by the US Constitution, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of a snubbed Oscar performance. But then, it takes a turn. See if you can spot it.
Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth, whereas we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority.
We have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. Yeah, that's not ideal. It's basically saying God put us in charge of the law, which in a country built on separation of church and state seems a bit militant theocracy to me. Then there's some more typical, terrifying to outsiders but normal to insiders stuff about being God's chosen people, the mantra of honestly way too many groups for someone to not end up disappointed. But then there's this bit that is a little bit more on the nose.
We are equipped and delegated by him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy.
Here we go. Now we have some implied violence and implicit animosity towards a group. Implied being the key word for the violence, but it's definitely there in its impliedness. Who is the enemy and who decides? Well, God's chosen people, of course. How do we know it's really God and not just your own ego calling the shots? Great question for another time. Let's continue.
We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the Constitution.
Hello, separation of church and state? Go fuck yourself.
We decree that our legislative branch, Congress, will write only laws that are righteous and constitutional.
See, if the word righteous was neutral, this wouldn't be so bad. But I have a feeling their definition may have a bias, a biblical bias, if you will.
We decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are biblical and constitutional.
Biblical and constitutional. Kind of contradictory there, isn't it? Given that thing about not establishing a religion and freedom of thought and religion. Kind of makes you think they like the Constitution because it's American, but would like to tweak it a bit so it's a little more Christian-y.
We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, and every evil attempt against our nation.
Ah, there it is. Anyone who is woke is an enemy, one that they pledge themselves against. Woke, of course, meaning anything that falls outside of a rigid, straight, white, cisgender agenda. Also women who have opinions on anything other than child rearing, cooking, and how to do their best impression of a creepy Doctor Who species. Oh, they didn't explicitly say that and I'm just assuming? Well, I've seen these groups use the term enough to recognize the particulars of that specific type of dog whistle that my ears are now attuned to what is actually being said. See, again, if you left out the everyone we don't like is the enemy and we want to turn the country into a theocracy stuff from earlier, it's a fine statement about unity, but with the other context, it's just a groupthink, us versus them reinforcer.
We know this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles.
Judeo-Christian principles of rich white men get to make all the rules?
We will never stop fighting. We will never, ever give up
It shall be saved. From the woke mob, I guess. The woke mob who just has so much power, you guys. That's why they were able to stop the anti-LGBTQ+ bills in red states and stop the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And why socialism has been taking over the entirety of the US. Oh wait, this video was terrifying. And it speaks to a long-running ideological group from not just the US, but multiple areas of the world. Christian Dominionists, particularly post-millennial ones, where instead of preaching that a rapture is just around the corner, it preaches that we need to get the nation to fall in line with our strict conservative Christian rules, and only then will God come to us and regale us for our commitment to him. Christian Dominionists are, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, Christo-fascists. They want an all-Christian nation that solely follows their version of Christianity, and they want to get rid of, by any means necessary, either by conversion, imprisonment, subjugation, or elimination, anyone who doesn't agree with their worldview. This group has been steadily growing in power since about the 70s, when people like Jerry Falwell Sr. and Phyllis Schlafly and the Moral Majority and Pat Robertson and the Quiverful movement and the newly revamped, at the time, Southern Baptist Convention all ended up united in their goal to instill their religion as the rule of the land by intentionally influencing voters and by getting people on their side into as many positions of political power as possible. And they've been successful. It's taken decades, but Roe v. Wade getting overturned was a pretty big goal of theirs, and they slowly built up enough influence and kept at it long enough to see their goal achieved. Which is what makes this shit so scary. They are a united front who have been, and are continuing to, try and take over all of America, and implement themselves and their religion as the ruling power, based on an idea of national purity, wrapped up in a desire to return to a time long past that was supposedly perfect at the time, before they let all those woke people ruin the place. This means anyone who isn't straight, cisgender, rigidly conformist to their gender roles, and in America it also includes anyone who isn't white. In fact, several historians will point out that while Roe v. Wade is seen as the unifier of these once unaffiliated groups, the actual unifier was Brown versus the Board of Education from several years earlier. There is nothing wrong with being religious or being Christian, but forcing everyone to adhere to it or be punished for it is super fucking uncool. It's all super fucked up, so if you find yourself at the voting booth or at the church congregation and see this sort of thing happening, resist and act against it. This has been The Pretentious Gentleman. Thank you to the follower who sent me the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.